Welcome to the second of my recap videos for the week. You're listening to the account with a report for Wednesday, April 12th, or day 413 of the war in Ukraine. As the front lines and general staff reports are outdated, I will be skipping those segments. On this day, we had the surfacing of a horrific Warcrime video and additional infos on the leaked documents. I also have two articles I want to point out. All other news updates are grouped into the usual: situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and international developments. And now for the first article to point out, titled, "It's really scary, but we keep going because people need us. Frontline stories from essential workers." Do you know how a post office operates during a war? How a postman or postwoman delivers pensions to a destroyed building? Or how a manager issues social benefits somewhere near Bakhmut, seeing people who have spent over a year hiding in basements? What about road builders working on a road at the contact line as Russian forces fire across it? Or evacuation leaders organizing transport for hundreds of people in ordinary train carriages? These people are bringing victory closer with their work, risking their lives every day. They are motivated not by reward or pay rises, but by the people they cannot turn their backs on during this war. Ukrainska Pravda Shitya talked to employees of the Ukrainian Postal Service, Ukrainian Railways, and the Ukrainian Road Agency about their genuinely heroic everyday lives. Please give the article a read. The second article is titled, "Nature on the Frontier: How peatlands are helping to defend Ukraine's borders." The state border cuts the Almani peatlands into two parts. The larger one belongs to Belarus and the smaller one to Ukraine. You won't find the name of these peatlands on any list of wonders of Ukraine, and there are people in our country who haven't even heard of their existence. This is partly because the peatlands brand is clearly inferior in terms of attractiveness to any other natural brand. Yet the Almani peatlands are one of the largest marsh complexes in Europe that have been preserved in an almost untouched condition. This is definitely good news. After all, peat deposits store carbon, which the marsh has been absorbing from the atmosphere for thousands of years to curb the greenhouse effect. Not to mention that any marsh is home to many species of plants and animals that cannot live anywhere else. And recently, Ukrainians have had cause to remember another well-known but forgotten role of peatlands: their military role. After all, they are an almost insurmountable obstacle for military equipment and thus are able to protect our state borders just as well as specially designed fortifications. Ukrainska Pravda explains the value of the Almani peatlands, how they are being protected, and why they, and therefore all Ukrainians, are still in danger. Please consider reading this article. I will refrain from sharing any sensitive information and footage. However, due to the nature of the war crime, it may be disturbing to some. Please skip this segment if you're not comfortable with this kind of information. A look at the news surrounding the surfaced war crime video. A video recorded by Russian soldiers shows them brutally murdering a captured Ukrainian serviceman by cutting his head off. According to CNN, actually two videos emerged on social media last week showing Russian invaders beheading Ukrainian soldiers. Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has called on world leaders to react to the video. The European Union has emphasized that the video of the execution of the Ukrainian prisoner of war, if it is proved to be genuine, is further evidence of the Russian Federation's contempt for international law and said that those involved should not go unpunished. Czech President Petr Pavel stated, "If this is confirmed, it will put Russian soldiers alongside the Islamic State, which we all must condemn." Dmytro Kuleba, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, has stated that the video emphasizes the need to kick Russia out of the UN Security Council and the UN in general. He called it absurd that Russia is presiding over the UN Security Council and stated that Russia is worse than ISIS. According to Vladimir Osechkin, founder of the Russian human rights organization Gulagu.net, The Wagner Group was involved in the killing of the Ukrainian prisoner of war whose head was cut off while he was still alive. The UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine is appalled by gruesome videos of Russian atrocities against Ukrainian soldiers. According to a statement, these latest violations must also be properly investigated and the perpetrators must be held accountable. The Security Service of Ukraine has launched a pre-trial investigation into the brutal murder. Vasyl Maliuk, head of the ESSU, stressed that the security forces would find the monsters who did it. The updates on the leaked documents. 50 members from the UK Special Forces were in Ukraine in February to March of this year, according to one of the leaked Pentagon documents. Another classified document alleges that Serbia, the only country in Europe that has refused to sanction Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, has agreed to supply arms to Kyiv or has already sent them. The Serbian Ministry of Defense has denied this claim. Further documents reveal that the US Defense Intelligence Agency considered 4 wildcard scenarios for the development of the war in Ukraine. The scenarios are the death of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a change of leadership in the Russian armed forces, and a Ukrainian strike against the Kremlin. Other documents contain estimates of the losses of Ukraine and Russia in the full-scale war, claiming 354,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers have been killed or wounded since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. The documents also suggest the war will likely last past 2023. The Washington Post has reported that the Ukrainian counteroffensive, expected to launch this spring, has been delayed by poor weather conditions, slow supplies of weapons, equipment and ammunition from the West, and the Pentagon documents leak, which revealed the weak spots in Ukraine's air defense. During a press conference, United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said that Ukraine has much of the capability it needs to launch a successful counteroffensive, even in the light of the recent leak of US intelligence documents. The leaked classified documents of the US Department of Defense contains a mixture of true and false information, Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov said. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. The Prime Minister of Ukraine, Denis Shmyhal, has stated that the Ukrainian forces' counteroffensive may start in the summer of this year. He also revealed that Ukraine needs at least $14.1 billion for reconstruction this year alone. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held a meeting with the bipartisan delegation of the Senate of the United States Congress. The parties discussed further directions of assistance from the United States and the role of the Congress in this regard. After the meeting, the delegation stated they are pleased with the level of accountability and transparency of the use of American aid. A Russian lieutenant general who ordered the shelling of civilians in the Donetsk region and led the assault on the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol will be tried in court. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has submitted a draft law on termination of the agreement between Ukraine and the Republic of Belarus on mutual protection of state secrets to the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine for consideration. President Zelensky also received the 2 highest awards from the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, the Honor of the Nation Award and the Order of Chokhar Dudayev. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. Russian occupation authorities have transported more than 100,000 Ukrainian children from Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast for medical treatment, Ukraine's National Resistance Center reported. The National Resistance Center also reported that Russian occupiers are preparing a plan to evacuate Rosatom employees from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in the city of Enerhodar. The Russian-appointed head of Crimea, Sergei Aksionov, has said that a demonstration and parade would not be held on the occupied peninsula this year on May 1st and Victory Day. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. The Russian Defense Ministry conducted a test launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile, Russian state-controlled media reported on April 11th. During a visit to Budapest, Hungary, The Belarusian foreign minister called for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine and the start of peace talks. The Hungarian foreign minister said that he met with the Belarusian foreign minister because Hungary wants peace in Ukraine as soon as possible. Russia and China are in secret talks with Iran to supply Russia with ammonium perchlorate, a chemical used to propel missiles. Reports prepared by the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies of the University of Alberta state that Russia's abduction of Ukrainian children is an established genocidal tactic during the war. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. France is allegedly blocking an EU decision to finance the supply of ammunition to Ukraine, which requires unanimity among member states. The annual report of the Estonian Security Police states that the Russian FSB is systematically trying to recruit Ukrainian war refugees arriving from Russia to Estonia. Spain plans to send 6 Leopard 2A4 tanks to Ukraine in the coming days. The shipping is to be completed by the end of April. The U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Controls has announced a new set of sanctions related to Russia's full-scale armed aggression against Ukraine, adding 80 entities and individuals across the world to the list of specially designated nationals. Ukraine has reportedly attempted to purchase weapons from Brazil to defend itself against Russia's military aggression, but Brazil's authorities have declined the offer and instead pushed for peace talks. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defence. The UK Defence Intelligence has reported that Russian forces have built 3 defence lines along a 120-kilometer stretch in Zaporizhia Oblast, but they will be of little use without sufficient troops and artillery support. A look at the assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. The Kremlin passed legislation to use tools of digital authoritarianism to digitize and improve the effectiveness of issuing summonses and crack down on Russian draft dodgers. The Russian Ministry of Defense, MOD, and Wagner Group financier Yevgeny Prigozhin acknowledged each other's roles in the Bakhmut effort on April 11th. A small fringe group of pro-war Russian mill bloggers called for the Russian government to repeal the censorship laws against discrediting the Russian military. And that concludes this recap. If you're interested in any of the articles, you can find links to them in the description as usual. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.